Dr. Janet Beeler-Marfisi is a researcher at the Ontario Veterinary College studying equine asthma, in particular, how pollutants may intensify asthma in horses. Dr. Beeler, when we spoke earlier in 2023, you estimated 100,000 out of 700,000 horses in Canada suffer from equine asthma, and that was by conservative estimates. What do you think of that estimate now that we're contending with wildfires across our country?
It has to be higher. There's no question it has to be higher. As you know, my husband is a racehorse trainer. He is noticing signs of mild equine asthma in a couple of his horses, and because of me and his own insistence on protecting their respiratory health, he does check the air quality health index and does modulate their activity. But even with that, he is noticing signs of mild equine asthma in particularly in one of his star performers, which is very concerning.
So, how important is it for horse owners to check the air quality index before planning their training sessions?
I would say it's of utmost importance to monitor the air quality health index that's available across the country in your specific region, and looking at the forecast of it so that you can plan things like turnout, and you can plan things like exercise at times of day when it is predicted to be or known to be a lesser risk to your horse's health.
What are the signs of lung damage from pollutants like smoke inhalation, and how long do lungs take to heal if they are damaged?
Well, I'll answer the first part of that question first because it's easier to answer than the second part. So the first part is that they're similar to you and me. You may notice that their eyes are watering, their nose is watering. And if you can feel that poor air quality making your throat sore, you'll recognize that in your horse from them coughing. And then if they are moving around a bit more, if you are working them, you may notice that they become fatigued. And they may also develop, if they are asthma-prone horses already, like with heaves, then they may develop of more pronounced coughing and more pronounced fatigue and things like that. They may also, if they're quite affected by the smoke, they may have reduced appetite and reduced thirst. But if you notice any of these signs, it is really wise to stop physical activity. It is really wise to move them into the barn, provided that the air quality is better in there than outside. And it's always very important to provide fresh, clean water at all times, and then to make sure that there's not a dust source increasing the problems associated with them breathing in the forest fire smoke. And by that, I mean reducing dust in hay by soaking it for 15 minutes, draining it, and then feeding it, but never storing that soaked hay. You must feed it quickly. And then if they are outside, making sure that if the paddock is dusty, that you water it down and wet down their bedding in their stall as well, just to help make that air around them as good as possible for them to, deal with the added pressure of the smoke.
Okay, and if their lungs are damaged?
If the lungs are damaged, that depends on the degree of damage. I don't have a firm answer for you, but I would advocate strongly getting your veterinarian out to assess lung function. They will listen to your horse's lungs. They may do what's called rebreathing, where they briefly put a bag over the horse's nose. That makes them breathe in and out more frequently and more strongly, and then that allows the veterinarian to hear subtle changes. And then they may even do something like a lung wash to see what types of inflammatory cells are present in the lungs of your horse. That will do two things. That will tell them whether they've got severe equine asthma or mild equine asthma. Severe equine asthma used to be called heaves. I still call it heaves. And mild equine asthma used to be called inflammatory airway disease. And so if they have a mild bout of mild equine asthma, it will probably be several weeks before that calms down. And I recognize that that impinges on training time. I recognize that that has repercussions on earnings and shows and all of that. But it's really critical to dial back on their exercise and allow their lungs to heal, because forcing them to work in poor air quality, forcing them to work when they are having asthma, makes the lung damage worse and can lead to the development of severe equine asthma eventually. So with your vet coming out and actually doing the full examination, they can see what's going on in the lung and they can tailor therapies to that, so that you can receive puffers or you can be recommended to nebulize them. And these things will help the lungs heal a little more rapidly than just allowing it to go away on its own.
Okay, and then there's all the usual management protocols found in barns that prioritize respiratory health. You want to just go over some of those for us?
Yeah, my favorite soapbox. Thank you. Yes. When you're cleaning stalls, if at all possible, get the horses out into turnout while you're cleaning the stalls, because that generates a lot of dust. Let's think about this for a minute. You know, when you run your finger along the tack box, how often does it come away clean? For most of us, it doesn't come away that clean that often, and that is what your horse is breathing in, and that's what you're generating when you're cleaning stalls. So get the horses out into turnout, keep them out for an hour after you're done cleaning the stalls, if possible. And then when you're sweeping up the aisle afterwards, wet that down so you don't create a bunch of dust by sweeping. Never sweep that debris into any horse's stall. That generates a bunch of dust in their environment, their breathing zone. And then wet down their bedding, and again, steam or soak the hay. Feed, and if you can't do that, then feed some low dust feedstuffs like alfalfa cubes, or properly wetted and rehydrated and all of that, or extruded pelleted feeds, depending on the athletic needs of your horse, of course. And then also paying attention to the arena. You know yourself when you're in an arena and how much dust can be kicked up in there. Proper management of that surface, wetting it down and keeping it groomed, and that will help keep the dust down. And the same is true for track surfaces. If you are working with standardbreds or thoroughbreds, making sure that that is properly maintained and some sort of dust minimizing substrate is put over top of that, like water or calcium chloride. There's one more, and that would be to avoid feeding hay in like big bale feeders that allow them to get their noses right in there. So avoiding, because that makes a nose bag of dust for them. Bale feeders are fine if they can only pull out strands at a time. And then to minimize the waste on that, because I know that that's a problem too, that there's a lot of hay wastage around those. There are some hay nets that have a small enough hole in them that they really do have to work to pull that out strand by strand, and they can't get their little nose put right in there. So that would be my other big item I would want to pay attention to.
Thank you so much, Dr. Beeler, for those important tips on keeping our horses' respiratory health.
No problem. Thanks.